So in this video we will be preparing a butternut squash for roasting. This squash has its sprout end where it was attached to the vine. This is the flower end. This base of the butternut squash that is a little bit bigger is called the bulb end, and this is more of the stem end. There's a couple different ways to prepare this. Butternut squash is fairly tough and can be hard to cut, so you may need to make sure you have a large, sharp knife. Even with that, it can be kind of a challenge. So one way to make this easier, which I won't demonstrate today, but it is a technique to help you peel your butternut squash easier, is to prick the skin with a fork, or, in multiple places, and then actually stick the whole squash in your microwave for 3 minutes. You could also remove the ends before placing it in the microwave, and that's the first step we'll do when we prepare it here today. That will soften the squash and start it to cook a little bit and make it much easier to peel. I'm going to demonstrate without microwaving because not everyone does have a microwave at their disposal. So with my very large chef knife, this is probably closer to a 10-inch chef knife that I've sharpened today, we're going to remove the ends. This really does require some muscle, and this sprout end is very firm. Spin it around to do the same at the bottom. Not nearly as hard. So you can see here on the bulb end is where the seeds are. If you go about halfway or a fourth of the way up, depending on the shape of your butternut squash, where this rounded part starts to flatten out into the stem, you can make a cut there, basically cutting this into 2 smaller portions. You might have to roll your squash. So this top part is going to be all flesh. This part has the seeds. Now that we have our 2 portions of the squash, we're going to peel it. You can use a vegetable peeler or a paring knife, and you'll just make strips from top to bottom, removing that first layer of peel. Again, takes a little bit of elbow grease. You don't have to get all of this whiteness off, but that's a less flavorful part, more associated with the peel. I'm going to see more of that orange coming through. Some winter squashes have edible peels, so delicata squash is one squash that you can actually cook and eat the peel. It's really good for you. Some people eat the peel of acorn squash as well. With the butternut, it's just kind of a thick peel. Alright, so that's that half. So we're going to prepare this butternut squash for roasting. My stem end actually had an area that looks almost like it was trying to grow seeds again. I think this might be an older butternut squash and it started to just dry out. Shouldn't affect the taste at all. We can just kind of cut that away. So you can go ahead and make slices. We'll just kind of set those guys off to the side. This is supposed to be all solid flesh, but it's going to end up looking a bit more like the bulb end. And then taking a couple slices at a time, you can slice them in half and then dice. We want like a medium dice. The goal is to make these pieces all about the same size. I've got some that are smaller in there. Because we're going to roast them all together, and the closer in size they are, the more evenly they will roast. I'm going to take out this stuff from the middle. It's a little too soft. I don't want it to end up getting mushy. So again, just stack and slice, and then dice. If you have any of these pieces that have a fair amount of what looks like peel on them, you could trim that some more if you wanted to. or if they're smaller, just get rid of them. Now with the bulb end, you could slice these and just roast them in this shape. It's kind of a pretty way to do it, and it's nice for adding to salads or on the side of a main dish. Or you can also dice those pieces. And really you could just kind of stack a couple of them and go around getting them about the same size as the other chunks. Now that we have our butternut squash cubed, I'll show you how to prepare it for roasting. In the class, we'll be mixing it with other root vegetables, but the technique is the same. I like to use a rimmed baking sheet like this. I also like to line the baking sheet with parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, don't worry about it. If you have a silicone baking mat, that would also work. This would be especially important if you're not using oil to prepare your roasted vegetables. I'm going to use a very small amount of oil. I like the parchment paper though because it makes cleanup pretty easy. So we'll take our diced butternut squash. So you can see the important thing with roasting is that you are going to have a single layer of vegetables. So you want to smooth it out with your hands so that there's not any veggies that are on top of each other. Then to season it, again, I'm using avocado oil. This is a high heat oil, just a little drizzle. Really just enough to coat the vegetables. A little bit of sea salt. Fresh cracked black pepper. And some garlic powder if you like that. And then you can use a spatula or your hands to coat all of the pieces so that they have a little bit of the spices and oil on them. You could also do this in a bowl and toss to coat. That would ensure that everything's getting really well covered. I don't like dirtying more than one dish if I don't have to. This may take slightly more effort, but same results. Again, using your hands would be a good way to mix these. Then you'll have to wash your hands. So once you've got the veggies mixed with the seasonings, then spread them out again in their single layer. And they'll go into the oven. So for roasting the butternut squash, we're going to put them in the oven at 425 degrees. It's going to take about 45 minutes. I usually set the timer for 15 or 20 minutes, then go ahead and pull the pan out, flip them, stir them, make sure that the pieces on the edge, which might cook a little faster, are reincorporated, and then put it back in for another 15 to 25 minutes until they're fork tender and ready to eat. Our butternut squash has been in the oven for about 20 minutes. Looks like some of the edges are starting to get crispy. You can see it's sweating a little bit. I'm going to stir it so that those pieces kind of get all mixed around, and then put it back in the oven for probably another 15 or 20 minutes. Here's the finished product of our roasted squash. You can see how that little bit of oil did help those pieces really kind of brown and caramelize. And this is going to be a great addition to a rice bowl or your favorite salad. So really nice extra plant fiber, protein, and micronutrients.